This is the 8th grade midterm. Read the text and answer the following questions. The following two articles are from a magazine about little-known sports facts. Source 1. The All-American Girls Baseball League. During World War II, so many young men were serving in the Army that several professional baseball teams were forced to disband. Chicago Cubs owner Philip K. Wrigley was afraid that Major League Baseball parks were in danger of going bankrupt. So in 1943, he created the All-American Girls Baseball League. Wrigley hoped that if nothing else, the teams would attract a few fans interested in the unusual experience of watching women play professional sports. It turned out that women's games were very exciting. In fact, at the league's peak in 1948, there were 10 teams and more than 1 million fans. By 1950, the league was in trouble. By 1950, the league was in trouble. A new invention called television was entering more and more American households. It provided families with stay-at-home entertainment. The men's Major League Baseball games began to be televised and attendance at women's games dropped. After very low attendance in 1954, the league disbanded. Even though the league only lasted 11 years, it still holds people's interest today. Several popular books have been written about the history of the Women's Baseball League. In 1988, a permanent display was installed at the National Baseball Hall of Fame and the museum called Women in Baseball. Then, in 1992, actress Gina Davis starred in the movie A League of Their Own. It told the story of how the league started and reminded viewers of that amazing era. Source 2. Alta Weiss, the belle of the ball game. People who have seen the movie A League of Their Own know about the All-American Girls Baseball League. However, few know that there were women playing baseball in men's leagues long before women took to the field in the 1940s. One of the first and best female baseball players was Alta Weiss of Ohio. Alta was the daughter of a doctor who taught her how to hunt and gave her a love for music. Most importantly, he encouraged her to play sports, especially baseball. Her talent for the game was evident from the age of 2, when she threw corn cobs at a pesky tomcat that was bothering her. She had the wrist snap and follow through of a major leaguer, according to Barbara Grogovich, a leading authority on women's baseball. By the age of 14, Alta was playing first base for the second team. This was a group of young prospects and second-tier players. The games were played at Weiss Ballpark, which her father had founded. However, her career in baseball began in earnest when her family was on vacation in Vermillion, Ohio. Alta saw some young men playing catch and joined in. The mayor of Vermillion, H.P. Williams, happened to be watching. Mayor Williams suggested to Charles Hedloff, the manager of the men's semi-professional Vermillion Independents, that he sign Alta to play for the team. Hedloff refused. So instead, Williams arranged a doubleheader between two local teams, with Alta pitching for one team. She struck out 15 men in the first game and 9 in the second. Hedloff immediately changed his mind and asked her to join his team. Women at the time were not allowed to wear pants, but Weiss found out that she could not play in skirts. "I tried," she said. "I wore a skirt over my bloomers and nearly broke my neck. Finally, I was forced to wear bloomers, but made wide enough that the fullness gave a skirt-like effect." No matter what Alta wore, she was a great pitcher who could throw a sinking fastball, a knuckleball, and even a spitball. She knew how to change speed so that even the best male hitters had a hard time hitting the ball. Alta's debut in the Independence in 1907, 1,200 fans showed up to watch her pitch. The Independents won the first game in 11 innings with a score of 4-3. Alta became so popular with the fans that special trains ran from Cleveland to Vermilion whenever she was scheduled to play. She routinely drew 3,000 fans to each game. Alta made enough money as a baseball player to put herself through medical school as the only woman in her class. While she was in school, the Olympic Committee asked her to participate in the Olympics, but her father would not allow it. During medical school, and even as a practicing physician, Alta continued to pitch occasionally in men's baseball leagues into the 1920s. Question number 1. This question has 2 parts. First answer part A, then answer part B. Part A. Which of these inferences about the author's point of view is supported by the text? The author believes that female baseball was a fad and deserves no further attention. The author thinks that female baseball is interesting and that Alta Weiss deserves recognition for her baseball successes. The author feels that there are many inaccuracies in the movies and books made about women in baseball. The author thinks that Alta Weiss was important to women of her time and that she should have pushed her father to allow her to play in the Olympics. Part B. Which detail from the text best supports your answer to Part A? Chicago Cubs owner Philip K. Wrigley was afraid that Major League Baseball parks were in danger of going bankrupt. So in 1943, he created All-American Girls Baseball Team. People who have seen the movie A League of Their Own know about the All-American Girls Baseball League. However, few know that there were women playing baseball in men's leagues long before women took to the field in the 1940s. One of the first and best female baseball players was Alta Weiss of Ohio. While she was in school, the Olympic Committee asked her to participate in the Olympics, but her father would not allow it. Question 2, scroll to the bottom. Which statement evaluates the structural pattern of the passage, the All-American Girls Baseball Team? It told the story in the order each of the events occurred. It begins and ends with historical information about World War II. It begins with the current status of baseball and then discusses its past. It provides a history of baseball from its beginning till now. Question 3. Which statement from Alta Weiss Which statement from the Alta Weiss text best supports the idea that she was a determined, fearless woman? Alta was the daughter of a doctor who taught her how to hunt and gave her a love for music. Women at the time were not allowed to wear pants, but Weiss found out that she could not play in skirts. Alta made enough money as a baseball player to put herself through medical school as the only woman in her class. By the age of 14, Alta was playing first base for the second team. This was a group of young prospects and second-tier players. Question 4. Which best explains the organizational strategy used in Alta Weiss' passage? It explains what Alta did for a living and then describes how she put herself through school. It provides a chronological account of Alta Weiss's life. It begins with the most important details of Alta Weiss's life and ends with the least important. It randomly refers to Alta Weiss's various baseball accomplishments throughout the passage. Question 5. Which fact from Alta Weiss, the belle of the ball game, is an example of irony. Alta's father encouraged her to play sports, but refused to let her go to the Olympics.
Mr. Abel?
Alta's debut with the Independents drew a crowd of 1,200 fans to watch her pitch. Alta made enough money playing baseball to put her through medical school. Alta tried to play baseball in a skirt but nearly suffered injuries until she switched to bloomers. Question 6. What effect does this sentence from the passage, Alta Weiss, the belle of the ball game, have on readers? However, few know that there were women playing baseball in men's leagues long before women took to the field in the 1940s. It causes readers to consider how unusual it was to see women play at all, let alone on a men's team. It requires readers to consider outside information to determine how important Alta Weiss really was to the team. It challenges readers to rethink their assumptions about women having athletic ability. It forces readers to think about how important men's leagues were during the early 1900s. Question 7. Summarize the central idea of the All-American Girls Baseball League. Use key evidence from the text to support your summary. Type your essay in the box. Eighth grade midterm continued. Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. The room in which the boys were fed was a large stone hall with a copper at one end, out of which the master, dressed in an apron for the purpose and assisted by one or two women, ladled gruel at meal times. Of this festive composition, each boy had one porringer and no more, except on occasions of great public rejoicing, when he had 2 ounces and a quarter of bread besides. The bowls never wanted washing. The boys polished them with their spoons till they shone again, and when they had performed this operation, which never took very long, the spoons being nearly as large as the bowls, they would sit staring at the copper with such eager eyes, as if they had devoured the very bricks of which it was composed, enjoying themselves meanwhile in sucking their fingers most assiduously, with the view of catching up any stray splashes of gruel that might have been cast thereon. Boys had generally excellent appetites. Oliver Twist and his companions suffered the tortures of slow starvation for 3 months. At last they got so voracious and wild with hunger that one boy, who was tall for his age and hadn't been used to that sort of thing, for his father had kept a small cook shop, hinted darkly to his companions that unless he had another basin of gruel per diem, he was afraid he might some night happen to eat the boy who slept next to him, who happened to be a weakly youth of tender age. He had a wild, hungry eye, and they implicitly believed him. A council was held. Lots were cast who should walk up to the master after supper that evening and ask for more, and it fell on Oliver Twist. The evening arrived, and the boys took their places. The master, in his cook's uniform, stationed himself at the copper. His pauper assistants ranged themselves behind him. The gruel was served out, and a long grace was said over the short commons. The gruel disappeared. The boys whispered each other and winked at Oliver, while his next neighbors nudged him. Child as he was desperate with hunger and reckless with misery. He rose from the table and advancing to the master, basin, spoon in hand, said, somewhat alarmed at his temerity, "Please, sir, I want some more." The master was a fat, healthy man, but he turned very pale. He gazed in stupefied astonishment on the small rebel for some seconds, and then clung for support to the copper. The assistants were paralyzed with wonder, the boys with fear. "What?" said the master at length in a faint voice. "Please, sir," replied Oliver, "I want some more." The master aimed a blow at Oliver's head with the ladle, pinioned him in his arms, and shrieked aloud for the beetle. The board was sitting in solemn conclave when Mr. Bumble rushed into the room in great excitement, and addressing the gentleman in the high chair, said, "Mr. Limbkins, I beg your pardon, sir. Oliver Twist has asked for more." There was a general start. Horror was depicted on every countenance. "For more?" said Mr. Limbkins. "Compose yourself, Bumble, and answer me directly. Do I understand that he asked for more after he had eaten the supper allotted by the dietary?" "He did, sir," replied Bumble. "That boy will be hung," said the gentleman in the white waistcoat. "I know that boy will be hung." Nobody controverted the prophet gentleman's opinion. An animated discussion took place. Oliver was ordered into instant confinement, and a bill was next morning pasted on the outside of the gate, offering a reward of £5 to anybody who would take Oliver Twist off the hands of the parish. In other words, £5 and Oliver Twist were offered to any man or woman who wanted an apprentice to any trade, business, or calling. "I never was more convinced of anything in my life," said the gentleman in the white waistcoat, as he knocked at the gate and read the bill next morning. "I never was more convinced of anything in my life than I am that that boy will come to be hung. As I propose to show in the sequel whether the white-coated gentleman was right or not, I should perhaps mar the interest of this narrative, supposing it to possess any at all, if I venture to hint just yet whether the life of Oliver Twist had this violent termination or no. Part A. In paragraph 1, why does the author describe the boy who was afraid he might some night happen to eat the boy who slept next to him? To show how the adults in charge at the institution treated the boys. To provide details that developed a major character in the passage. To illustrate how the boys are affected by the conditions at the institution. To offer an example of the way the boys govern themselves in the passage. Which two phrases offer additional support for the answer to Part A? Suffered the tortures of slow starvation. One boy who was tall for his age and hadn't been used to that sort of thing. A council was held, lots were cast. The master in his cook's uniform stationed himself at the copper. He was desperate with hunger and reckless with misery. The assistants were paralyzed with wonder. Question 9, Part A. How do the other boys provoke Oliver Twist's decision to ask for the entire bowl, an extra bowl of gruel? They hint that the weaker boy might be hurt while he is sleeping during the night. They discourage him from asking and act surprised by his sudden decision. They trick him into asking for more by winking and smiling. They develop a plan, and he was chosen to carry it out. Which quotation from the passage from Oliver Twist supports the answer to Part A? They were staring at the copper with such eager eyes as if they could have devoured the very bricks of which it was composed. A council was held, and lots were cast. His pauper assistants ranged themselves behind him. The gruel was served out. He rose from the table, somewhat alarmed at his temerity. Part C. How does the author's use of whispered, winked, and nudged in paragraph 2 impact the meaning of the paragraph? By making Oliver's request for more food seem humorous, by emphasizing the danger to Oliver in requesting more food, by adding a feeling of suspense to Oliver's request for more food, by casting the light-hearted attitude of the boys with Oliver's serious reasons for requesting more food. Question 10, Part A. How does the word festive in paragraph 1 affect the meaning of the paragraph? By adding sarcasm to show the poor quality of the meal being served. By creating imagery of the elaborate meal that is about to be served. By producing a description of a special celebration. By comparing an elaborate holiday meal with a typical meal. What phrase from paragraph 1 supports the answer to Part A? The room in which the boys were fed was a large stone hall. The master dressed in an apron for the purpose and assisted by 1 or 2 women. Each boy had 1 porringer and no more, except on occasions of great public rejoicing. Question 11. Dickens incorporates dialogue in his passage. Use evidence from the passage to write an essay analyzing how the dialogue functions to reveal aspects of Oliver Twist. The criteria is listed above. Complete your essay in the box provided.